Thank you very much for that introduction. So thanks for joining us, and certainly this is an interesting panel. It will be, I'm sure, because of our distinguished panelists here. I think what the key is to consider here as we start this conversation is that I would like viewers to walk away with answers to key questions here, and there are really two questions that I would like people to walk away with some clarity on, and that's what are the main factors that are impacting the metal prices, and how can they become an opportunity for mining companies, really? And I think the second part of that is how can companies create a robust business plan to avoid being affected by market volatility. I referred to that in my last presentation here just a few minutes ago, that there is a lot of volatility, and we expect more of it this year as the recovery out of the pandemic certainly feels like it's going to be a little bit of a tail recovery rather than a sudden stop. So with that, I first ask the panelists to perhaps introduce themselves, take turns introducing themselves and perhaps making some opening remarks, and then we can get into our three main themes here. So why don't we start with Carlos? Carlos Diaz?
Yes, good morning, everyone. And first of all, thank you for inviting me to the Mexico Mining Forum. I'm Carlos Diaz de la Garza. I'm the CEO of Moody's Investor Service. My prior experience, I was an investment banker for 25 years, actually working for Scotiabank for 11 years as the head for syndications in Latin America, and dealing with many of the mining projects. As you know, Canadians are very devoted to the mining industry. And obviously, I have under my umbrella, I've had the opportunity to basically support many mining companies here in Mexico that have done various phases of exploration and then production and everything. If we want to introduce the rest of the panel, and then we'll come back to your questions, Dean,
okay,
so that everybody has a chance to introduce themselves.
Thank you, Carlos. Andrew, do you want to take a go?
Sure. No, thank you, Dean, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here and amongst this panel today. So as was mentioned, my name is Andrew Snowden. I'm the Chief Financial Officer of Torx Gold. We're an established gold producer in the Guerrero region of Mexico. We actually just released our 2021 production results a couple of weeks ago and announced a production record of 470,000 ounces through the course of the year. And we're also in the process of reinvesting that cash into the future of the company, into a new underground mine within the same property in Guerrero, which is known as the Media Luna mine, which will give us production for many decades to come. Before joining Torx, I started my career more in the base metal space, and so I've been through a number of different cycles and have a number of different perspectives on various different commodities, which I think will be a good discussion and input into the debate today, Dean. So that's my introduction.
Thank you, Andrew. John?
Okay, pleased to meet you. Thank you, Dean, and hello to everybody on the team here. Yeah, my name is John Darch. I'm the chairman of Norro Gold. We have two mining projects in Sonora County, and the flagship one is Cerro Caliche, where we recently completed a PEA, which is the first step towards our trying to move to production. The Cerro Caliche has gone through quite a transformation over 2 years, from exploration right through to near-term development. My background has always been in finance, banking in the UK and Canada, and creating a small group of public companies from the 80s right through until now. So that's my background, my position, and my contribution to the company is always in the business plan, strategy, and execution.
Thank you, thank you, John. Ethan, you're up.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Etienne Morin, CFO at Orla Mining. Orla is probably the newest mining company, and we just put our Camino Rojo project into production as of December, so a few weeks into production, and we're currently ramping up. Targeted production of about 100,000 gold ounces a year. That's what we're sort of aiming for. So we're pretty excited. We've been going through, development and financing through the pandemic and up to this point. So it's been an exciting last couple of years. Prior to Orla, I spent 12 years still in the gold business at Goldcorp. So spent a lot of time in Mexico over my career as Goldcorp had a good asset base in Mexico. So happy to share some of my thoughts on some of the questions that'll be upcoming.
Thank you. Looking forward to it. And finally, Jerry.
Thanks, guys. Thanks again, everyone, for the invite at the Mexico Mining Forum, Business Forum, 2022. So my name is Jerry Wong. I'm the CFO for Impact Silver Corp and a group of companies. We are a fully integrated small cap producer. So we average about just under 1 million ounces of pure silver a year. What sets us really apart is we've always been focused on cash flow. So over the last 12 years or so, we've produced over 12 million ounces of silver, 90% pure silver, no equivalents. We've sold silver to Trafigura, Glencore, even Samsung in Korea. We've mostly self-financed. We had a sister company called Norro Gold Drilling, which does about 120 million a year in drilling in mining in South America, Central America, and Africa in 20 plus countries. So over the last 10 years, I've helped a lot of junior companies in the space help raise capital. And prior to that, I was in junior mining small market raisings for various juniors at CIBC and also a small boutique bank called Gemini. So that's my background. In Mexico, we have over 200 employees. So this forum is a great idea to obviously for us to see what's out there, what the business climate is like, and certainly strategize and obviously listen to some of the like-minded individuals and business leaders in the sector about how we can all mitigate and maybe bring additional prosperity and wealth to the sector as obviously things change, ESG, COVID, and various things that 2022 will continue to throw at us, I'm sure.
Thank you, Jerry. Well said. And certainly, I think we have a great opportunity here to hear from some professionals that are quite versed, not only in the mining sector, but also with extensive experience across Latin America and Mexico in particular. Jerry, I'm gonna start with you as we push forward into the discussion here. Which minerals do you think represent the greatest opportunities in the Mexico mining industry? You know, particularly around this theme that I touched on in my presentation around green energy and its expectation to grow as we move forward.
Great question, Dean. So thanks for starting off with us first. So as I mentioned, our name is Impact Silver. We're easily the purest silver producer out there, publicly traded, as most of the mid-cap continues to grow beyond the 3 to 5 million ounces of silver per year, given the historical silver to gold ratio at 15 to 1. I mean, we all know it's currently at over 75 to 85 to 1, right? So, I mean, to process an ounce of silver, it doesn't take 1/80th, 1/100th the amount of work in terms of chemical processing, manpower, and crushing facilities, right? So to see that, you know, 1 million ounces of silver is less than 20,000 ounces of gold processed a year in terms of revenue size, it seems bonkers to most finance people on the ground and certainly operational professionals. But that's how it is reflected right now. If you can get a small gold mine producing for 20,000 ounces a year, which isn't very big, you know, in the grand scheme of things, we have guys here doing 100,000 ounces, 250,000 ounces a year, which is, you know, in our market deemed a mid cap. You know, that's barely moving the needle, right? In the gold company. For a silver company, if you're doing 1.5 million ounces a year, you're like half the size of Endeavor, or you know maybe a quarter of the size of a First Majestic. So that kind of tells you, I really believe that silver is fairly underpriced, given how much it costs to find, you know, the economical uses in the multiple industry applications that there is. There was a BMO report last year which actually outlined the tremendous undersupply of silver we'll have in terms of photovoltaic cells and solar panels, right? Mm-hmm. So there's not a lot of pure silver assets and mines out there. Most of the mid caps are now reporting in equivalents, which is really why a lot of our investors love us to find a lot more pure silver mines, because they are hard to come by, right? It's very hard to find a pure 5 million ounces a year type producer in a good jurisdiction, good with great government support, clarity in terms of royalty, tax reporting structure, ease of access to capital. So that's obviously first and foremost. I think silver is a great asset and very underexplored. It's just a significant amount of needs out there in terms of both industrial and also precious demand. We saw silver squeeze around this time last year. Silver hit $32, $33 from kind of a low of 24 at the beginning of January. So within a month, you had retail demand and Wall Street bets jumping on silver, right? So it's very similar to what GameStop happened the year before during the pandemic. And you had companies trading at 10, 15 times revenue. And that's kind of the euphoric and kind of the wild swings we can see when really the retail and general public gets behind a certain commodity. That's obviously shifting gears right now to electric metals, right? The Tesla, the Rivians, just to put it in perspective, Rivian has raised over 100 billion, right? And this is a company that has yet to really sell an electric truck. But obviously that's captured the tremendous imagination of the broad market. And that also kind of puts in perspective how small relatively our sector is in terms of mining, right? Because that one company pales almost the entire M&A sector landscape in 2021 for mining, that one deal. But that's obviously been great for us in terms of lithium, cobalt, electric metals, graphite. I think most of which, well highlighted, I think in Mexico lately has been lithium. There's a company called Bacanora, and they had a previous JV with Tesla, as you remember. There's a few other companies in the area that's associated with that. So I think silver, gold obviously is tremendous in Mexico. There's a byproduct for a lot of silver mines, and a lot of the electro metals like lithium, whether it's pegmatite or from the potash price underground. These are some of the top three I'll mention.
Thank you, Jerry. It's very good comments there. A lot of people sometimes forget the important role silver plays in the clean tech and global emission effort going forward. The focus is always on that big three: lithium, cobalt, and nickel and magnesium even. And so it's good to have a little reminder that silver is a critical part in some of these alternative energy sources that we're planning to increase consumption of going forward. Moving along, thank you, Jerry. John, do you have anything you want to add here?
It's difficult to add to such a comprehensive response from Jerry. It was like listening to a presentation as a real one. But I agree with what Jerry has said there. From my point of view, I think the big opportunities for Mexico really do lie in the silver, gold, and copper. And in terms of the greatest opportunity that it would be there in terms of your specific question would be the silver and copper. Those will be in great demand as we move forward, obviously, as we move to the more sort of green energy. So I'd say like silver, copper, and lithium.
Agreed. Andrew, you want to clean up?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Dean. And look, echo many of the same comments that were made. I mean, really, when you kind of think about where can Mexico benefit from the mining sector and particularly from the green energy revolution that we're seeing, to me, it comes down to, well, what are the commodities that Mexico are producing? And Mexico are top 10 producer of each of gold, silver, and copper. And so that's really where Mexico can really benefit going forward. I will say, at least when I kind of think about the energy revolution and where there is real demand for, the new age commodities going forward, to me, I get most excited about copper. Maybe in part because under our kind of new underground mine that we're building at the moment, we'll be producing about 50 million pounds of copper a year from 2024. So I have a little bit of a bias from that perspective. But there's lots of debate out there on battery chemistry, lots of discussion on what the right chemistry is to maximize energy density to get stability in the battery. I know there was mention from Jerry more on the cathode side around whether who's going to win the battle between nickel, cobalt, aluminum, manganese, and other attributes you've got on the anode side. We've got graphite or silicon, and then obviously lithium throughout. But to me, the one common denominator, irrespective of what battery chemistry you land on, is copper. You need copper in there to be able to get everything to work together. The weight of a battery, I think 10% of a battery's weight is copper content from a electric vehicle. And then on top of that, you've got all the wiring. I think copper is a commodity that's quite unique in that it's both malleable, it can be flexed to fit within vehicles, and at the same time is highly conductive. And so, looking forward, I think copper will be a big winner. Demand for copper will increase, in my view, quite substantially, and that will help drive prices. And so, when I kind of think, how can Mexico benefit from the green revolution? I think thinking about copper and how copper production can play a part is key. I'll also just make one other brief comment as well, is it's not only the mining sector that can contribute here. I think the role that Mexico can play is actually to be supportive of the green revolution themselves. We've seen that green revolution move from east to west. China was the first to really drive demand, then through Europe, now in North America. I think now we need to see Mexico and South America also play their part in really supporting renewable energy development within the country and supporting electric vehicle growth. And I think we'll see that with time. And I think then you've got the demand and the supply within Mexico, which will set them up, I think, for a long-term success.
Yeah, very good point there. I agree completely. And you talk about copper's role as a conductor within the vehicles themselves, but even beyond, like the charging and the infrastructure support that's required, there's a large part of the investment community that's overlooking the fact that there needs to be significant upgrade in infrastructure to support these electric vehicles that we're all planning to have. So great points there, guys. I really appreciate your comments there. I think we can press along here to the next key issue, and that is around investor protection in a world where we expect to see a lot more volatility. I touched on that as a theme that we saw leaving 2021. Certainly the pandemic and its impact, long-term, medium-term, has been taking toll. We saw inflation hitting record highs, and certainly despite being pacified, or attempts at pacifying concern around inflation exceeding 6% in many cases, there is legitimate concern that it is not temporary. It could be long. It could be longer than we all want to see this level of inflation. And certainly, gold has always been not quite popular for its inflation protection properties or use. And certainly, I think it's been seen a little bit of competition recently from Bitcoin, for instance. And we saw recently some comments out of Goldman Sachs saying that they do expect cryptocurrency to take away some of that market share from gold as inflation protection tool. But just curious to hear your own view about what metals, I talked about gold, but certainly please add or take away from that as you see fit. What metals remain the best safe haven for investors, in these uncertain times that we have been experiencing and expecting a lot more of? Do you expect gold to continue to be centerfold, or what are your thoughts? Let's start with Etienne.
Yeah, thanks for that, Dean. I'll start by saying I'm a gold bull, so I'm gonna make a case for gold here, but I won't pretend I'm an expert in Bitcoin, and relating to your question, Bitcoin isn't a metal, so we'll stay out of that. But I think before we look at which metal is a safe haven, I think we need to look at which asset class we think can perform well during times of uncertainty, and I think precious metals historically in comparison to stocks and the treasuries have performed very well, especially gold, as you pointed out, during challenging times. So if you look at where we're at in the world right now, we've got ongoing trade tensions between the US and China. We've got global supply chain disruptions caused by the pandemic. We've got public debt rising to unprecedented levels. We got political unrest in Eastern Europe. We got increased volatility in U.S. markets, and to say the least, we got inflation that hit pretty much the 30-year high this month. So there's a ton of uncertainty in the world at the moment, which often tends to result in risk aversion from the investment community, and gold tends to outperform during these times.
Mhm.
And we saw that as an example in 2020 on the back of COVID sort of taking off. We saw gold started trading in line with the market, and so went down initially, but quickly broke out to outperform the rest of the global markets. So, and then you fast forward a year, you look at that in contrast. In 2021, investors started feeling a lot more confident about the economic recovery and a lot less concern on the downside, and the equities outperformed the metals. So, so I think that sustained inflationary concerns in a short term will, I think, once again prove that gold can act as a hedge against market uncertainties and potential currency devaluation as well. The fundamentals around gold price remains strong, and I think, again, you look at the history, I don't think it's changed that much over the last few decades, and we know how hard it is. I think somebody made the point earlier. We know how hard it is to make new discoveries, and every gold company, every mining company is trying to replace reserves in this particular, the case for gold, and it takes time and capital to do so, and it's not going to create an oversupply anytime soon. So I think over the long term, gold should continue to outperform and demonstrate great strength, especially as an inflation hedge and against market volatility.
Thank you, Etienne. I think, Carlos, you might be, I'm pretty looking forward to your comments here, because just from your experience and where you sit right now, what are you seeing?
Well, basically, I mean, I would like to address the main question here that you asked, and Etienne properly touched on, and there are many points that I coincide with the panel. The first one is, what are the main factors impacting metal prices right now? So we have two of them that are clear. One is inflation, and the other one is high interest rates. Today, the Fed is meeting, and I mean, you've seen the volatility that's here to stay for 2022. And the first 2 days of this week, Monday, Tuesday, you've seen the stock exchanges volatile all over. Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, inflation and high interest rates, obviously you have to think of precious metals, and especially gold, as one of the safe havens. Okay, historically, it has been one of those safe havens when you have inflation. But I would like to put in context what we see in Moody's. Okay, we're expecting a growth of 4.4% overall in the G20 countries, okay? And that's for 2022. So in terms of mining, we're seeing conditions that are stable for the mining industry. And prices overall for 2022 should exceed the historical levels for most metals, okay? And for mining commodities through the late 2022. So what you're seeing here, as Etienne also mentioned, is you're seeing a lot of supply chain constraints overall in the market, mm-hmm. and you're seeing a very rapid recovery on demand post-COVID. And these two factors overall in the mining industry are keeping inventory levels very low at the ports, okay? So that's something that's going to affect prices, okay? Now, if we put into the mix that we're shifting towards ESG, okay, environmental and social governance, and we're shifting to electric cars, some metals will benefit more than others. When we talk about the opportunities of Mexico, we're seeing a benefit, obviously, in copper, and a little less in nickel and aluminum, okay? Obviously, lithium is one important mineral. I'll touch on the uncertainties that Mexico brings with the current federal administration that we have, and the energy reform that was passed, because there's something that's embedded in that reform that puts lithium as part of a national resource. And even though it will not affect previous concessions, that's something that has kept the investors a little bit aside on the mining side on lithium in Mexico, okay? So some other things are increased geopolitical risks. I'm very optimistic, and I coincide with Andrew with regards to copper, okay? I think that the structural deficit will keep copper high. We have supply that's struggling, and to keep up with the demand in certain regions, such as Chile and Peru. You also have elections over there. So there's a very limited number of projects that will increase the total global copper supply in 2022. So copper is one of the other safe havens that I see in that response. So mining companies are experiencing, with inflation and high interest rates, rising costs of labor, rising cost of energy, of freight, and possibly limited supplies, okay, in terms of higher prices for equipment and everything. And we also have a shortage on semiconductors and chips in the chips industry. So again, I mean, when you put all of that into context, there are clear opportunities for Mexico. There are clear opportunities because Mexico represents a country that has over 40 free trade agreements. The nearshoring opportunity of supplying the US and Canada, that's quite important with regards to the free trade agreement that's there. And obviously the resources. I mean, at the end of the day, Mexico has plenty of resources to basically pull on. But historically speaking, the majority of them go back to precious metals and go back to copper, to zinc, nickel, and aluminum, I would say. But if you ask me for two of the winners in terms of inflation and in terms of being long something, that would be gold in terms of precious metals. And with regards to base metals, I would go to copper, and that would be it. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Carlos. A very comprehensive answer there, and I also like the fact that it really segue into the final topic here. You know, the outlook, and you talked about. I think we covered in our earlier discussion points the opportunities around green energy and you know what that might bring for Mexico in terms of opportunities. And certainly we talk about the threats, you know, and certainly the volatility that the market is bringing here and how we can protect ourselves. And I think in your response, you also touched on the outlook and what you expect to see going forward here. And I think that's a nice little way to wrap up this discussion. I would love to have the input from a few of our panelists here and what they do expect in terms of investment outlook and the opportunities for mining companies in Mexico, especially with respect to the added uncertainty and risk of national policies and how that might impact mining companies going forward. Carlos, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add before we move on to another panelist.
Just very quickly, I mean, when you talk about the future and the expectations, I mean, obviously, we have great companies here. I know them, all of them, and I follow all of you. It's quite relevant to mention that when we talk about hedging and when we talk about opportunities, there are some products out there that banks do offer, and especially companies that have access to financing, such as, I mean, for example, silver streaming or gold streaming. That's quite important in terms of financing. If you're looking into hedging, if you're looking into protecting the resources and putting everybody into the game, that could be something that alleviates sometimes the pressure of the finances when you're in exploration phases and you haven't gone into production. So I think that there are more opportunities than threats going forward. I think that for the metals and the precious metals and the base metals in the future, I think that going forward, the demand will keep on going at least for 2022, even though we have certain pressures and certain geopolitical risks.
Okay, thank you. Let's start with John. I think we're pretty pressed for time here, so
I'll be as quick as I can. There's been very comprehensive responses from the panelists, so everything is really covered. The part I would just add is that this uncertainty that we have domestically, worldwide, we have the potential conflict between countries. No need to name them. We know what's going on there. All these things combined with the other uncertainties. COVID, let's not forget, that continues to have big stresses. The increase in costs that we find consequentially, you know, energy costs, water become a big issue. We touched on the nationalism in other countries and the fear that may happen. But for us, with Norro Gold, we have a very positive outlook. We're in Sonora State, where we have a lot of highly skilled miners. The area is mining centric, and the existing laws are actually favorable to Sonora Gold. So because of the combination of the rising metal prices and low interest rates, I think financing is going to be not easy, but it will be quite an easier path than other states within Mexico and other parts of the world. And I think, to add a little bit here, like, to remain optimistic to the investors who are being bombarded by Bitcoins and you must try this and you must try that. When it gets back to it, I think the most important thing for a company is to be very proactive and articulate well to its shareholders of what it's going to do. Now, it may not always be well received at any particular point in time, and expectations may be more than the company can deliver. But I think the main things that a company has to get out is that it has a good business plan, it moves forward, it's a dedicated team, and it must include the safety and the local environment and the community. And so to show the community how we're embracing the people, improving their lives, and I suppose importantly, reducing the carbon footprint. So that's basically it. Thank you.
Appreciate that, John. Ethan?
Yeah, thanks. And John, those were all very good comments. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I think in the introduction, I've been involved on and off with Mexican projects for a long time. And with Orla now being, as I mentioned, the newest sort of producer, we've been able to permit and construct, a mine during the pandemic. And I think this demonstrates, at least to us, the ability to do business and make large mining investment in a country in a favorable jurisdiction. I mean, just the fact that we received our permit, 3 months after the start of the pandemic, it still showed that the government was very much involved and wanted this to go through to keep the process going. So I think the other point to make is not only does Mexico have the mineral endowment, and I think we all benefit from that, but the expertise in country has been fantastic, and again, it's a country that's been mining for a long time, so having the ability to draw from local expertise, I think is a great support as well. And if you take a step back and you look at how many mines have been permitted and built over the last 10 years, I think in Mexico specifically, I think you can add them up pretty quickly. So again, it demonstrates that there's a willingness to do business there, and quite frankly, we can't say the same about many other jurisdictions around the world. We've specific to Orla, we've been able to finance that project with lots and lots of interest from institutions and private equities and investors generally, and I think that reflects well on the quality of the jurisdiction. That being said, though, you got to also look at the fact that every nation is working to strike, I think, a right balance between generating social and economic benefit for their own country, but also trying to remain competitive and attractive to foreign investment. So as long as it's reasonable and well communicated, I think the industry that industry players are well consulted, through whether it's Chamber of Commerce or these mining alliances there. But change in policy can be fine, and I think that companies like Orla's and the other panelists here, I think we all need to do our part to demonstrate that we're sharing the benefit with the host communities, and it goes back to ESG of what some of the other panelists have mentioned before. So this includes making sure that we have employment, proper training, social and local investments. Environmental preservation is also key, and along with paying our fair share of taxes and royalties at the end of the day. So it's striking the right balance, right? But Mexico has been, I think, very favorable to mining investments, and it should continue that way.
Thank you, Ethan. Very thoughtful and sincere comments there. Jerry, I'm sure you'd like to jump in.
Definitely, thanks, Dean. Yeah, hard to top up that at the end, but
Yeah.
great summaries from everyone so far. So yeah, in terms of outlook in Mexico, listen, between Impact and our previous company, Norro Gold, the service company drilling for hundreds of miners in South America and Central America. I mean, needless to say, our group is quite familiar with Mexico and very comfortable working there. We've raised nearly 70 million plus non-brokered, and we generated 3 times that in terms of revenue. So far, we've employed over 200 plus employees over the last 16 plus years. We've essentially rebuilt the entire local village and the town there of Zacualpan. When we started there in 2005, there were maybe 3 cars in a parking lot, as our CEO says. Now the parking lot is overflown, and we need to build a second one. People are parking on the side of a road, right? So it's a nice problem to have, but that's essentially really a nice anecdote to kind of tell you how much economical benefit we've brought to the area. And that's really to Etienne and John's point. You really have to bring in balance that benefit to the locals, that ESG, before ESG and CSR are these keywords and jargons that we all started hearing at mining conferences. These are things that obviously any one of us in the mining business community has to really share that benefit and wealth with the locals, right? Whether it's through job creation, training, water wells, bringing additional infrastructure to the area, soccer fields, and additional training. In addition to obviously social needs, balancing these really capitalistic requirements that our investors need to see, right? That trust, that clarity, and the consistency from the local governments. We're fortunate to be in the Estado de Mexico, which is just about 3.5 hours south of Mexico City, even to the airport. If you get there early enough, you beat traffic, you can actually get to our site from Mexico Airport in 3 hours. If you go down further south, obviously there are some certain unrest in areas with more turmoils than most. But I think overall, if you can get to a project to a development, near-term cash flow stage, there are capital out there. Earlier stage exploration companies certainly need additional excitement and really that high grade move the needle type exploration potential right now. With certainly the market changing and the uncertainty out there in the overall market, hard to really say that gold and copper, silver, certainly I can't really say that with the certainty that they're going to go down lower when we're all seeing inflation on the cost side, the labor, input energy, and everything else. We certainly believe that Mexico still remains to be one of the top places to do business. Again, main thing lastly to summarize is just seeing that need to balance out the ESG, the social needs, and with obviously the investor requirements and clarity, and that balance would be great for business.
Thank you, Jerry. Andrew, I'll give you the last word. I think we're over time, so.
Sure. No, thanks, Dean. I'll keep this very short there. I think lots of good comments have been said. I think from my perspective, the opportunity and the availability for financing really comes down to the project. If you've got a good project that particularly has low costs, financing will be there. I think companies should not get carried away with the current commodity price, whether it's copper, whether it's gold, silver. I think we need to make sure, particularly have that frame of looking at how can we make sure we manage costs, particularly in light of some of the challenges that Carlos mentioned earlier from an inflationary perspective. And if you can demonstrate that you've got a good project there that is a low cost operation, then I think financing is there. I think hedging could be a way to help that. My personal view is I think maybe as a developer, hedging has a good role to play. I think as an operator, you don't want to rely on hedging to be a viable business. Ultimately, you need to rely on your cost base to be a viable business, and hedging can help you through certain cycles. But if you focus on costs, I think financing will be there. I think the panel here has some great projects in Mexico, and I think for the types of projects that we have available, the financing, even in today's market with interest rates looking to be rising, there's lots of opportunities there for Mexican mining companies to get that financing and develop good, successful projects within Mexico. So I'll leave my comments there, Dean.
Thank you very much, and I'm very encouraged to listen to the panelists here this afternoon discussing these points, it's quite telling to gauge your responses to the national policy changes and how, as mining companies, there's no combative nature to your responses. You're very open and recognizing that each company is at a point, each countries are at a point where they're trying to find that balance of certainly attracting investors and attracting mining companies to operate within their borders, and certainly making sure that citizens get the best benefit that's possible. So I think we're at a stage now where the mining sector has become more of partners with governments, and certainly than we've seen. Certainly we've advanced a lot further than we were maybe 10, 20 years ago. And not only in Mexico, these challenges are being faced, of course, all across the world, really, even in Canada and the US, and certainly Peru, Chile, Brazil, all countries really are trying to find the best balance of attracting investment and doing the best for their citizens, both economically and socially as well. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for taking the time. Thank you for you sharing your experience and your insight and your thoughts with us, and certainly thank you to viewers for coming and listening and supporting this event. It's very important for us as a sector to collectively get together every now and then and discuss threats and opportunities within the mining sector. Thank you again for joining, and thank you again to our panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.